All right, so before we get started fully on our explicit teaching today, I want to just talk to you one more time briefly about what it is you're going to be doing on your independent time. So today we're going to be learning about interactions with an ecosystem, so food webs and more. Our learning target is I can identify in writing what species roles are in an ecosystem, and I can create a diagram that shows how energy flows in an ecosystem. You've already clicked on number 5, the middle tic-tac-toe board, because you're watching this video. You can also complete your notes in that worksheet you picked up when you walked in the door, or you can do it online. You'll just need to submit it through your Google Classroom at the end of the day so that I can check it over, make sure you've done it. And then after you've watched the rest of this video and taken your notes, either online or with the worksheet you picked up, you're going to choose 2 other squares on this board to complete, and so that you make a tic-tac-toe 3 in a row line. Okay? I don't care which 2 you pick, so long as you are completing your 3 in a row with this number 5 box being one of those 3. So after you've completed 2 of your choices and this middle box, you're going to go ahead and complete this slide. You'll put your number here for whichever box you picked and complete the 2 following question prompts. So the first one being, what roles did organisms in the food web discussed have? So things that you explored in the game or the podcast or whatever it is you were talking about, what organisms were included in that discussed food web and what roles did they have? The second question is, what information did you find interesting in this video, podcast, or game? So what about this link was interesting to you? What did you learn? What aspects of it were interesting or new? When you're done with both the tic-tac-toe assignment, picking 3, and the slide, you're going to move on to your food web activity. Okay. Now, up front, we have both the deciduous forest food web pictures and the grassland food web pictures. And you can use those to physically create a poster paper to complete this assignment, or you could do it on this Google slide. But either way, you're going to fill out this worksheet and fill out the questions to hand in. You picked this worksheet up when you walked in the door, but if you didn't, it's at the front of the room. It has all of your instructions for how to do this assignment, and there are some questions I need you to fill out for after you've completed your food web. If you choose to do it in the Google slide, you can pick one of these 2 slides and just create a food chain, putting the roles in there so that I know what you can identify the roles, and putting arrows to show the flow of energy. Okay. When you're done with all of those things, you've finished all the assignments, you can catch up in your late work, grab a book to read from the science library, or before the end of class, right? We're all going to meet up and we're going to finish our exit ticket. Okay. But for now, we're going to go ahead and go through our presentation and take some notes. Again, you can take notes in your online copy of your note page that's linked right here, or you can go ahead and grab your physical copy that you picked up as you walked in the door. So first, we have to know where energy in an ecosystem comes from. Most all energy comes from the sun. Okay, so for the purposes of this, we're going to say that our energy is entering the ecosystem through the sun. That energy is first used by producers or plants. That's why most plants are green. They're doing their photosynthesis, the chloroplast. So producers goes the sun, and then producers are the next level of an ecosystem food web. Okay, those producers are consumed or eaten by consumers. So this butterfly is consuming the pollen in this plant. So that would be the consumer. There are a couple different levels of consumers. The primary consumers, they eat or consume only producers. So that butterfly is a primary consumer. So they're herbivores. They're only eating producers. They're only eating plants. This caterpillar is another example of a primary consumer. Secondary consumers are the next level of consumer. They can be omnivores or carnivores. Okay, so they'll consume either only primary consumers. So a frog might only consume or eat flies, or both producers and primary consumers. A bird, for example, might eat worms or berries. So these two examples are primary consumers, the next level of consumer in the food web. And then tertiary consumers gain their nutrition by eating or consuming primary and secondary consumers. So they are generally carnivorous predators, but some might be omnivores as well. A hawk, for instance, is going to be eating squirrels and fish and a lot of primary and secondary consumers, but it also could pick up, some berries off a bush. But generally tertiary consumers and even above those, right, fourth consumer, quaternary consumers, they're going to mainly be eating other animals. Finally, the last role I want to talk about in the ecosystem are decomposers, and they can be found at any level of the ecosystem because they break down and decompose organic material for producers or plants to access and use. These could be, worms or other insects, bacteria, and fungi. Abiotic and biotic factors are two terms you're going to see a lot in this unit. Biotic factor is a living organism that impacts another living organism. So plants impact other living organisms because they give them someplace to live and they give them something to eat, right? Bacteria decompose other organisms, so they impact living organisms and non-living organisms, but for this, they're biotic. And birds, same thing, right? They're impacting other living organisms by eating them, by competing with them. But it's a living organism that impacts another living organism in the ecosystem. That's a biotic factor. An abiotic factor is a non-living thing that impacts a living organism. So a forest fire would be an abiotic factor. It's not living, but it's impacting a living organism and its habitat. Water, access of it, if there is none or if there's way too much and there's flooding, those can affect living organisms in an ecosystem. And sunlight, right? If there's no sun, producers wouldn't be able to produce energy in their own systems, and that would really affect the food web. So abiotic factors and biotic factors. Make sure you have them down in your notes. They're going to come back a lot later. Finally, let's look at a food web together. So these two, you can see down here where it says trophic level. We'll talk more about that next class. These two, algae and waterweed, are producers, and they're eaten or consumed by their primary or first, number one, so primary consumers, all the things in blue. These arrows in a food web show where energy is flowing. So the energy from this algae is flowing to the prawn, the carp, and the slug. See, that's where those arrows are going. The fly apparently doesn't eat algae. So the slug, the carp, the prawn all get energy from algae. And then the trout is also getting energy, but this time from the carp and the prawn. So that's where we see those arrows coming. And finally, that arrow is traveling to the kingfisher, the bird that would eat that trout or that carp. So this is what a food web looks like, and all these arrows are showing the flow of energy. When you go to create your own food web in this activity, that's what I need to see. I need to see those arrows moving from one organism to another to show energy flow in the system. I also want to see you put down the role that organism plays in that ecosystem, and if they are an herbivore, an omnivore, or carnivore. Okay, so again, during this activity, you're going to be creating a food web and telling me the roles that those organisms play in that ecosystem. So Go ahead and keep filling out your notes. If you haven't been doing it right along, you can always rewind this video and play it again if you missed something. And then when you're done with your notes, do exactly what we talked about before. You're going to pick 2 more of these squares to make 3 in a row, answer your 2 choice questions, and complete the activity. Again, when you are all done with that, you're going to go ahead and catch up on late work, grab a book to read from the science library, and I'll call everybody together about 3 minutes to 5 minutes before the end of class so we can complete our exit ticket. All right, thank you so much. If you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. I'll be around helping people out. Let me know. Thanks.